Cool, I'll start. Hello, we are Team 12. Our names are Dora, Jonathan, and Tony, and our presentation is about biogas as a solution to animal agriculture methane emissions.
So just a quick introduction. Methane emissions are a huge driver of climate change because they're another greenhouse gas. The big one people think of is CO2, but methane actually is a lot more important. I'll get into that more.
One of the biggest producers of methane is animal farming, specifically cattle farming, and which we'll get into a little more during this presentation.
And our solution for this is going to be increasing the use of biogas, which turns the waste from these farms into energy.
So just a bit of a background on methane. It's a greenhouse gas, which means that it traps the sun's energy in the atmosphere, just like CO2 does. And methane emissions account for about 25% of global warming caused by humans. And why is this? It's because although there's far less methane in the atmosphere than CO2, methane absorbs more heat per molecule, so the global warming potential is 100 times greater than CO2. And not only that, there are a bunch of different sources of methane you can see in this graph that are both natural. Most are wetlands and methane stored in ice and from termites and other natural sources. And then the other ones are from mining, coal mining, natural gas production, enteric fermentation, which is basically cow farts and gas released by animals after they digest food. And the other big one is rice farming. When they make rice paddies and they flood the wetlands, a lot of methane is released. And, one of the biggest reasons why methane is such a problem is because it creates a positive feedback loop. As global temperatures rise, ice in the Arctic melts, and all the methane that's stored in that Arctic permafrost gets released. And then it just creates more and more, it accelerates the problem basically. However, the one good news with methane, as opposed to CO2, it only stays in the atmosphere for about 9.1 years compared to CO2, which stays in the atmosphere for over 100 years. And that's good news because it means we can if we reduce methane emissions, we'll see a impact in the reduction of global warming a lot sooner than if we were to reduce CO2 emissions.
So for why does this matter from an environmental justice perspective? As more methane gets released into the atmosphere, climate change is going to get a lot worse. And according to the NAACP, climate change has a disproportionate impact on communities of color and low-income communities in the United States and around the world. And it's really important that we do our part to protect vulnerable communities, as they are doing the least to contribute to climate change, but they are facing the most repercussions because of it.
And so for an innovative solution and a call to action, implementing biogas recovery systems to help reduce methane emissions from livestock waste would definitely have a positive impact. By doing this, basically by creating more biogas recovery systems, we would be able to capture biogas from cattle, hog, and poultry farms. This can reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and recovering the methane from the biogas can provide a cost-efficient source of renewable energy. And in this case, once we'd be able to provide that cost-efficient source of renewable energy, it'll also target the second largest methane emission heavy industry, which would be the oil and gas industry, because then if we're able to produce a lot of sufficient renewable energy, then we'll be able to kind of go into the way of producing more electric cars and kind of taking more gas and oil run cars off the roads, which have been known to have a huge effect on this methane emissions issue. And we as individuals can spread awareness by refraining from eating beef and educating others on the positive impact that biogas recovery systems have on the environment. And as far as the social math goes, just one biogas recovery system has a potential to reduce methane emissions in the dairy and poultry industry by 300 tons, or a big room with about 43 elephants. And this is just for one biogas recovery system, like, assigned to one farm. And to just think about how many other systems we can implement in other farms basically would have a huge impact on the environment itself. And I think this is a great way to at least take a stand towards global warming. That's it.
That's a presentation.
Yes. Oh, do you have to stop the recording now?